The Big Issue. Breaking down the issues that matter.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Leadership Podcast. It's another edition of The Big Issue. And the big issue for today is 2023 polls and the pressure on military to scuttle the electoral process. As usual, I'm your regular host, George Agba, and with me here in the studio is our in-house analyst, David Tucker.
Good evening. Welcome to the show.
Well, the Chief of Defense Staff, General Lucky Irabor, last Thursday revealed that Nigerian military is under constant pressure to compromise the 2023 elections. Irabor said despite the mounting pressure, Nigerians can be rest assured that the military will remain neutral. Speaking with journalists at the 61st session of the State House ministerial briefing organized by the Presidential Communications Team at Aso Rock, the CDS said military personnel face pressure through inducements, but the armed forces will remain apolitical as it is taking the necessary pressure to ensure compliance with the directive of President Muhammadu Buhari. The CDS revelation sparked reactions, with most Nigerians wondering what set of individuals could be pressuring the country's military to compromise the 2023 elections. For a nation that had once tasted the bitter pills of a civil war, and of course, which is currently confronted with multi-layered insecurity threats, the fire of electoral violence on subsisting problems was another nightmare, especially when the 2023 poll is such that has generated a lot of fears among Nigerians, from the collection from the PVCs to certain utterances by politicians. Well, David Tucker, the problem with Nigerians now is that thing did not sit well with them, coming from the number one military officer in the country. So I would say, because as a chief of defense staff, I think he is the highest senior officer.
Of course, he is.
To the other service chiefs.
Yes. He's the most senior.
The most senior. And that has raised suspicion. And the thinking here is that, number one, if the military is under pressure, there is this possibility that opposition politicians cannot pressure the military. I think the thinking is that the pressure might be coming either from the governing party or those who are in government, because number one, President Muhammadu Buhari is the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of the Federal Republic. And there couldn't have been any pressure from any quarters than from those who are in authority. And the president is a member of the governing party. Although that is Nigerians thinking. But for us, we know that in Nigeria as it is, even the opposition elements too, who pressure the military using religious, tribal sentiment. Who do you think the CDS could actually be referring to when it talks of the military being under pressure?
You know, when I initially saw the report, I was like, wait. So on the second thought, when I now read deep down, and I realized, yes, people could be trying to, disrupt the elections. But the military, they've maintained several times that they are neutral. I hope they will also be neutral this time around. Now, see, before I even dive detail into this election, his comment, I want to clear something. On Friday, the defense headquarters issued a statement in regards to this. And then they quoted exactly what he said. And this is what they said, according to them. They said the reference briefing was broadcast live on NTA. Then after the briefing, but this is a question that elicited that response. You have spoken on military neutrality in times of elections, specifically based on what the commander-in-chief directed. Just this week, the president gave a directive to armed forces to remain neutral during the 2023 elections. But my worry is that politicians have a way of piling pressure on security forces, and we are witnesses to some of the things that occurred in the past exercises. Now, given this kind of scenario, where politicians or political actors try to pile pressure on your men, how far have you prepared to go to ensure that neutrality, as directed by the president, is protected? And then, this was the CDS response now. He said, the chief of defense staff, that's according to the DDI now, the director of defense, Major General Jimmy Akpo, he said, I am glad you reiterated what the commander-in-chief said or his directive to the armed forces. I am afraid you said you have to worry. Rather than worry, I would think that trust in our cause is paramount. Why? Of course, in our training, there will always be pressure from all quarters wanting to induce security forces, not just the military. You understand? Security forces. That is what criminal enterprise is all about. That is what someone that is wrong is all about. But what makes the difference is the professional approach in dealing with the issues, and that is what the military intends doing. That is the reason why we have ramped up our training in that regard, sensitization, a lot of engagements across formations and units and on a daily basis. Then, more so, to articulate code of conduct for all personnel, which has been done and distributed. So what? Why we should act before? Okay, so what? Why should we should act before, during, after the elections? These have been codified in our standard operating procedures, that's SOP, issued to them. And so it remains the duty of commanders to ensure the directive has indicated that the contents of SOPs is adhered to by every personnel of the armed forces. So my good friend, please cease from worrying, rather trust and also engage others to trust that we will keep faith with these desires that we have. Now, from this one, I did not see where he said there have always been pressures from training, and I agree with that. Because when you have such persons as parents, you know what they pass through. There's always that pressure
on them.
Now, when it comes to internal security and election security, it is not the direct responsibility of the armed forces. So I expect them to take a back seat and allow the police, who are in charge of internal security, to do their job. The police has continually assured us that they are going to be on ground and ensure a free and fair election. And they won't allow anybody to tinker with the election. We just hope, but we know they don't have the capacities. That is where they will need to rely on other security agencies for that support. I think the military can only come in when there's a breakdown of law and order. I think that's where the pressure he's talking about. If at all there was anything about pressure that everyone is wondering, I think we should start asking. When we hear somebody trying to ferment trouble, that is it, because when there is a breakdown of rule and law in the country, automatically the military will step in to restore order. But if that does not happen, if we're able to conduct ourselves that day without any hitches, I don't think there will be any need for the military to step in and maybe scuttle power from or truncate our democracy. So it is now left for our politicians who are expressing all these fears. Watch your utterances. A declaration for election should not be a declaration for war. Jonathan has always said the blood that no politician's ambition should be worth the blood of a Nigerian. But the way when you monitor the elections, you see that the way these people are talking, they don't care what happens. all they're after is winning elections. We've had people. I think there was one commissioner in Borno. He was not questioned. I think that's where the pressure, if at all there was any pressure that the CDS mentioned. That guy said something. Nobody said anything. I now saw another video of another politician in Zamfara, where he said that day, if they don't vote APC, then you deal with them. What does that mean? Who is asking those questions? I don't think the police have even invited him. The one that made in Borno has not been invited. So if you allow such persons continue with that kind of mentality, you should know that there's a declaration of war. And when that war breaks out, there's no way the politicians will stay in this country to run this country. They are going to run away. They will take the next available private jets out of this country with their families and then leave us to suffer the whatever that comes, the consequence. And what would be the next thing? The military will step in to protect the nation because they won't want the country to collapse. So I think these are the issues that the CDS is trying to look at.
Explain them.
And then, but of course, it's not the primary responsibility, but people keep bringing the military into issues. You know that elections security is that of the police. And we have the layer of other security. But after the police, we have other people that also do civil policing that support. The military is just the protection of the territorial integrity. They are supposed to be in the barracks and conducting research, planning how to defend this country, carrying out. We're supposed to have bases in other small African countries, not to be deployed for internal security within this place and overstretching, stressing our soldiers beyond the X. When you see there, lots of them are worn out. Somebody will tell you for the past 5-9 years he has been out in the field for internal security operation. What for? What for? Because a Nigerian wants to kill another Nigerian for no good reason. Why do you want to kill this person? They can't really justify why they want to do this, but they want to do it.
Well, Taka, I understand what you're saying, but I think let's go down memory lane so that we can have an idea of how the military now became actively involved in the electoral process in the country. Okay. I think it dates back to 2015 when insurgency was at its peak, and then Goodluck Jonathan had to postpone the general election because of fear of impending attacks by terrorists. And then, in the old day way, there were threats by these insurgents, the terrorists, that the elections will not hold. They will make sure they scuttle the election. And what the president then did was to deploy the military to strategic places to support the police and other security agencies in ensuring that there is a free and fair, peaceful poll. Yes. President Muhammadu Buhari took up that too in 2019. And he took proactive measures by deploying the army to ensure the security of Nigerians and a peaceful electoral exercise. But as expected in democracy, people are bound to oppose the best of intention or policies of government. That is why we'll always see the lawful tendencies by opposition to stiffly antagonize and condemn or even berate government on every initiative it takes. Because whatever the government of the day does will be interpreted negatively to mean that the intention is for its own advantage, federal might. But in 2019, when insecurity was at its peak, especially terror attacks, and 2015 and 2019, how can you assess the situation now vis-a-vis the need for the military to still be involved actively in the electoral process?
One thing when you went down memory lane, and I want to go back to 2014. We had the military were deployed in 2014 when we conducted that election, and an incumbent president lost that election. So that means the military was not compromised. And if the military could resist all these pressures then, and of course, you should know that definitely there will be pressures. People will try to, you take orders from me, do this. all that has to be done. But it is not their responsibility. It is only when there is the fall of the committee of the government that the military will step in. So we should not really be looking at the military alone. Have you cautioned your community policing? Have you looked at all these things? The military were there when Jonathan lost to the opposition. So if this military can still be here, I have that belief that they can still be here and do it. Because when you talk to a lot of, all of them want, from my interaction with them, most of them will tell you, you vote a bad government, you blame us for the killings because we cannot be everywhere. We are fighting the enemies, but there's no way there will be war without blood. We are trained, we understand. They will tell you from their training, they know that 25% is bound, is normal for maybe when they go to camp. When they are passing out, and if 25% of them don't come out, no problem. They'll survive the training, no problem. It's okay. It means you did your job. So it is not for them. Death is nothing. But when a civilian dies, we start raising eyebrows and asking questions. But to a military man, the day you sign the death warrant, you know.
No.
Like my dad will tell you, that gun you want to carry, it is not to kill an animal.
As a soldier, automatically means you are ready to die.
That's why most of them, when they pass out, they come, they buy you drink, you tell you they are doing their burial. So that the day they die, you should not cry. I have a lot of them. Friends and brothers, siblings, they will tell you, I'm buying you this drink. Drink. The day you hear my death, don't cry. I've done my burial. So you know that these guys are committed to the cause. They don't care. But they'll tell you if a government is bad, the government, first of all, they take directives from their above. If there's no political will to end whatever we are suffering today, the military cannot do otherwise. The military goes for an operation, they'll tell you kinetic and non-kinetic. The kinetic, they're using the gun nozzle. The non-kinetic, they know there are things that led to this crisis. Right. What are those things that the government failed to address? Now, they try to address it, say, okay, give those who don't have water, they don't have clinic, they're agitated. Provide those things. And when they come, they try to do those things in a way they are trying to support and then, trying to win your confidence. You're not forgotten.
Well, thank you very much, David. Before we continue, we'll actually take a short break so that we'll just do some announcements and some public awareness. But as we do so, we hope that our viewers will begin to contribute constructively to the conversation on the big issue. And they do so by their way of comment. And we hope that by the time we come back from this short break, we'll begin to see their comments trickling in, and then we'll take them one after the other. Don't go offline. We'll be back in a moment.
For sponsorship and advert placements, please contact 080-3688-6158. Last Word Leadership Podcast Studio. You have the last word.
The Big Issue. Breaking down the issues that matter.
Welcome back. We are still on the Big Issue in Leadership Podcast. And of course, the big issue of the day is the 2023 polls and the pressure on the military to compromise the electoral process. Well, you've just said it all, David Tucker, that the chief of defense staff perhaps was quoted out of context.
Of course.
And I think that is what the director of information defense is trying to bring out his direct quote, juxtaposing it with the question that was thrown at him. And of course, I think it is actually true that he was not as if he was quoted out of context. At the end of the day, what I would have understood is that his words were twisted.
You know,
To
of
actually
course,
suit the
me,
situation.
why I cannot even condemn, can't even criticize the reports. There's room for interpretative journalism. So you may say something, I decide to interpret it the way I feel, the way I look at it.
Of course.
You may be looking at it from this angle, I decide to take a look at it from this angle. It's allowed.
Yes, because the chief of defense staff said, well, there had always been
The pressure. So I'll now take
that
it,
means
that pressure is still there.
At the end of the day, the typical journalist will not
know that there is a pressure. But it's
instead
not
of
that
him
he's
to
telling
give
you.
a direct answer and say, no, we are not under pressure in respect of the 2023. He only acknowledged the fact that the pressure is not only on the 2023 poll, it spanned beyond, because in 2019 we were under pressure. That's why there has always been pressure.
But we still maintained, we kept to our mandate,
yes,
and we gave Nigerians their.
And I think what the chief of defense staff should have been looking at is to let the public know from that question that despite its involvement in the electoral process, just to ensure that it's a peaceful process, the army is completely, the military is completely restricted to what they call the rules of engagement.
I think that they only provide support to the civil authority.
Yes.
It is when the military, the police encounters hitches, and when they are being overpowered, they call the military to step in. So I don't see anywhere, you know, this issue of pressure, we should not really be looking at the pressure. We should be asking, whoever is thinking about pressures, is it from the ruling party? If the ruling party has failed to fulfill their promises, Nigerians will hold them to account. Whoever that is coming, you've held an office before, Nigerians will hold you to account. So if you don't have, that's why you see the campaign too. The campaign pattern has also changed. The politicking has changed. Nobody is walking along the streets, eating corn, going to fry akara, no, because they know that those strategies have failed. Nigerians have grown that stage. Now, what are they trying to do? When he was this, he did this. He has brought up this. The campaign tone has changed. So if a government promised people to do this, deliver this, and people don't see it, people don't feel safe under a particular decision, when they reject it via the ballot, I don't see that as any decision. The military will just step in and defend the decision of the people. That's all. Because they can't come back and fight the whole Nigerians. And you can't come back and kill the same people you're trying to protect. You're being paid to protect. First of all, most of the military guys, they still have families with us. Whatever we're passing through, they are passing through. True. If it is insecurity, traveling on the roads, when the roads became a death trap, became a safe haven for kidnappers and all this, they fell victim to it. Most of them, even though they may not want to admit and tell you this, but we that are close, we can count this soldier, this officer was traveling on this road. In fact, some of them will tell you so person paid, ransom when the family was kidnapped. We had those kind of information. So they are not exempted from whatever problems we are facing as a nation. So if anything that will happen that will take this country to the path of truth, I'm sure they will welcome that. If Nigerians choose the right, I don't think they are going to support anybody to subvert the will of the people. I don't think they will do that. Because they've taken an oath. They have the soldiers' creed. They know it. They know what it tells them to do. So nobody wants to go against that same creed that they've sworn to.
Well, we know that there was military is being overstretched. Apart from protecting the sovereignty of the country by checking against external aggression,
they are still within.
Trying
to settle communal
clashes, security,
which is out of their
because of the insurgency.
It's out of their mandate.
And these bandits that have come again. But at the same time, let's look at it now. We know very well that we will still need the military in the 2022 polls because the insecurity in the country is not over yet.
They are
Especially you hear of the attacks on INEC offices across the country. if the military is actually sent to give support for the electoral process, what is the military actually doing to support the security agencies in charge of internal security to actually curb this idea of series of attack on INEC offices? We've not had the military strike in any form to say, oh, they were able to repel. Oh, are
No,
they?
I am not a military spokesperson, but I will just chip in one or two because one thing I know for a fact, most of the operations are combined. When there's an attack, they will repel together but allow the lead agency. If it is a drug-related operation, they will allow NDLEA to tell Nigerians what happened. If it is something that has to do with civil matters, policing and all these things, they will allow the Nigerian police to issue a statement. But of course, there's this, most of our security, they are limited when it comes to firepower. Their firepower is limited. Of course, you should know that the kind of training the military guys go through, the things they can withstand, it is not the same with our own this thing, but the training is limited due to resources or whatever reasons they will tell you, or years of neglect. But the military, despite their challenges, they try to. Like my dad will always tell you, any of my siblings, stick to your basic training. He will tell you, that's all. Stick to your. When you go, you meet him, come to greet him, he will tell you, do you know why he survived? His siblings survived. He will tell you, we never forgot the training we were given. So anywhere we go to, he said, I was not educated. It was what I was told that I was doing. You show me what I'm supposed to do in a situation like this, and I stick to it, and I survived. So you, now that you've come, thank God you can read. Read the books. Stick to the basic training. Don't try to be what you are not. So the military will always support. And I'm sure they are supporting.
Supporting, of course.
I'm sure they are supporting because
like
ordinarily, if you go to the southeast, they are the ones.
Some of these operations we've actually had whenever the police will always make them public, they will say it was a joint operation.
Good. So the joint means there are elements of other security amongst them. Yes. They combine together and can execute an operation. But there's a lead agency in every operation. There's a lead agency. Somebody has to spearhead, whether the Nigerian police, if it is, they want to raid. Sometimes when they want to raid a drug hideout, they look for military personnel to support, to give them, when people see that camo, yes. there's this, this kind of fear that comes with it. When you look at it, you need to respect it, that national color. Looking at it alone gives you that, if you're not used to it, unless some people that, this one was born in the barracks, used it to do bed sheets, all this. So those ones, when they look at it, they don't, all these barracks boys, looking at it, they feel it's normal now. But other people who are not used to the military, once they see the camo,
those respect themselves.
They'll panic.
Because they know that is a symbol of a superior force.
Everybody will withdraw because when attack them and see what will happen. What is going to come next?
Well, thank you, David. I think we have our viewers trying to comment now, and here we have Johanna Nareni Solomon. Johanna Nareni Solomon said, I hope he stands on his words. That is, he's talking about the chief of defense staff, who said the military will not succumb to such pressure to compromise the election. And of course, Ibrahim Mohammed there is there, and this is what Ibrahim Mohammed has to say. Nigerian army is another political party, in case you are missing it. But the CDS is coming here to say a different story here. May God see us through.
I don't agree with that kind of submission because these people, they were there when APC came to power. Now, if you tell me because some of the former chiefs are now romancing with the military have joined, yes, but there are still elements of other generals who are also in these various political parties who will want this country to go down. Of course, all the generals know what is at stake. So wherever they are, like Jonathan said, when Nigerians decide what they want, they will look at the bigger picture And then people will need to either ways, either you compromise your, you can't want your personal interest to overshadow that of the Nigerian
interest, the national interest.
No, it's not
You
possible.
don't sacrifice
And
national interest on the altar
of personal interest. It is not possible.
Thank you very much.
It is actually not possible.
David, but let's look. The president had given marching orders to the military and said they should ensure that insurgency, banditry, terror attacks ends before the end of December. Although we see we can give it to the military, they have been trying, because the incidents of attack, the rate at which the attacks were coming, we don't see them no more. Although we've been seeing attacks here and there, but that most Nigerians believe that. About how many days to go now?
I remember there was a story I did, and a lot of people say whatever that is happening, they hope it is sustained. Because we experienced with almost the same thing in 2019. So if there are reduced attacks, I don't know which agreement they have with whoever the enemies of the state, but all Nigerians are yearning for is a peaceful environment where they can go about their businesses. So it is left for the security agencies to, now they declared 19 wanted. I think about 2 have been killed. How many arrested? When I contacted, they said they will get back to me. I've not gotten that information. So out of 19, you killed 2. And you placed a 5 million bounty. And these guys are in the open glare. They live within communities. If the government is not that distant from the Nigerians, what is the big deal from you to? These guys live amongst the people. The people know them. If they trust their military, they trust their security agencies to protect them and give them the kind of safety that they want. Of course, they would have come to say, this is where this person is, this is where he operates. He will be coming to social place. One was Toband, and a lot, even government officials attended. So I think the politicians are only paying lip service to this entire security because they are benefiting from it. At the end of the day, they are using it to campaign. When it is resolved, they may not have any other thing to campaign. To tell Nigerians
what they are going to earn in security,
yes,
and the rest. Well, that is the much we can take for today's edition of The Big Issue. Whatever the case, the country is such that will require the assistance of the military to give support to the police and other security agencies saddled with the responsibility of ensuring internal security. And of course, as they do so, it's expected that the military is apolitical. And that is what the Chief of Defense Staff has said, that the military will not succumb to pressure to compromise the polls. Well, be that as it may, it's an unfolding event. In the build-up to the 2023 elections, we've been seeing serious attack on INEC facilities across the country. And just like David said, the military has contributed in ensuring that the level of attack is not what we are seeing. And they do so by joint operations with other security agencies. And how they are going to get involved in the 2023 polls, their role will actually determine whether the Chief of Defense Staff was actually telling the truth when he said that the military will remain apolitical and will not succumb to pressure to compromise the polls. Thank you for keeping tab with us out there. And of course, I'd like to thank our viewers for joining us and stay with us until the end of this program. And of course, I will not fail to thank our in-house analyst, David Taka, for addressing the big issue. Join us same time tomorrow for another edition of this program. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you for watching. For sponsorship and advert placements, please contact 080-3688-6158. Last Word Leadership Podcast Studio. You have the last word.